No matter how hard you try, you can't stop us now.
No matter how hard you try, you can't stop us now.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am not your host, but I am the co-host, Lauren Z, with my handsome husband, the one and only Jason Zamorano.
That's right. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate that.
Reversing roles. Fun sometimes.
Well, today we got a power-packed episode. We're going to be talking about the JFK assassination and Lee Harvey Oswald, how it's connected with unsolved murder of a famous doctor, an underground secret laboratory, and Castro.
And cancer-causing monkey viruses. And the CIA, the FBI, the mafia. The list goes on. Jason, I know you wanted to do this podcast so bad on the assassination of JFK, and I found myself completely lost for about 6 days trying to decipher through all the information, all the witness accounts, all the different authors who've written books on this story, and it was a challenge to get through it all.
There's so much information out there. It's really, really hard to pinpoint who was accurate and who wasn't. But hey, let's just follow the money. That's what I always do. Look at who's in connection with who, and actually you'll see through these public relations how this all comes together. I think we should start in 1967, which was after the JFK assassination, right?
Right. So John F. Kennedy was killed on November 22nd, 1963. By allegedly a lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, who was standing on a 6th floor window when it happened. JFK was touring Texas at that time.
So again, we have the lone wolf scenario that they just love to replay again and again. The guy must have been a crack shot to get that shot off from the position of where he was in the building. But we are told that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone wolf and took out Kennedy.
One really crazy thing, too, is John F. Kennedy was a very controversial president at that time, kind of like how Donald Trump is today.
Yeah.
John F. Kennedy was trying to bring back a revival in patriotism at the time. We were going through the Vietnam War. We were in the Cold War with Russia. And Fidel Castro in Cuba was joining forces with Russia, pointing missiles at our country. Right. So the country at that time was in a lot of, stress. And the baby boomers who were pro-America, full-blown Americana, nationalist, and the new college kids who were being forced to be drafted into the war were burning their draft cards, as well as creating riots and protesting. So it was a country divided at that time too.
And this was the 60s, going through the big drug craze, the hippies, all of that.
The war on drugs, the war on cancer, so much was going on at that time. And for being such a controversial president, the question that I raise is, why was he in a convertible car touring 100 miles through the city of Texas?
Yeah, it made no sense.
Unprotected.
Made no sense.
Right. So go ahead, babe. I think you wanted to start off with Jim Garrison was the district attorney general.
So Jim Garrison was the district attorney in New Orleans, and he actually conducted his own investigation into the JFK assassination. And he brought charges and arrested Clay Shaw for conspiring to kill JFK.
Right. And Clay Shaw at that time was the former general manager of the International Trademark. He worked directly with the CIA as a CIA member, and he had direct ties to Lee Oswald.
And the CIA director at that time was George Bush.
Oh, okay. George Bush Sr.
Right.
And he was previously the president as well.
No, he later became the president.
Oh, he later became the president.
Right.
Okay.
This is just the Bush ties again.
Another deep state member.
These connections, right? All of these connections. Yeah. Unfortunately, though, in 1967, Garrison couldn't prove in a court of law that Clay Shaw had conspired to kill Kennedy. The main evidence that he was relying on was basically Clay Shaw's connection with Lee Harvey Oswald, somewhat of a handler. They did have reports of Lee Harvey Oswald and Clay Shaw actually in the same car, but they couldn't prove it because what had happened is everyone started basically dying, right?
Exactly. And I think as we dive into these characters, the story gets more and more complex. Jim Garrison at that time was becoming the clown of the nation. Everyone thought Jim Garrison was just some crazy paranoid nutcase who needed to be shut down because the media at that time was one-sided.
Right. Yeah.
Which goes back to today's time. History is repeating itself. Here is President Trump trying to expose the deep state, trying to expose like the shadow government, and every single news outlet is basically portraying him as like a full-blown idiot. And that's what Jim Garrison was at that time too, when he was trying to blow the trumpet and say something's going on with the CIA, the FBI, etc. Underground stuff going on.
And JFK was doing some pretty revolutionary things at the time. Not only were we going through, the Cuban Russia missile crisis, but we were also going through a revolution of our own as far as in the 60s, like we talked about. But he was looking at exposing the Federal Reserve and ending the Federal Reserve. And that's ultimately what got him killed.
And so many Americans, once they hear about that idea of ending the Federal Reserve, because they are not an American entity, they're a third party, foreign, I don't know if they're a foreign government, but it's not an American company. So we're paying all this money to the IRS. We're paying so much in taxes, and that money is literally going out of America. One of another big things about John F. Kennedy at that time, he was obviously trying to expose the deep state and all that stuff. He was also butting heads frequently with the CIA. During the missile crisis and the war against the Cold War with Russia, he wanted answers like, what are you guys doing to stop Fidel Castro? What are you doing to basically get him to stop pointing missiles at our country? And the CIA never had answers. Everything the CIA did was basically not documented. Even the head of the CIA says, we don't keep files, we don't document anything, there's nothing for me to tell you. And so JFK said, you people need to be regulated because I'm the president and you guys are being insubordinate on borderlining treason against the American government by not answering to your president. So he assigned his brother Bobby Kennedy to become the head of the U.S. Attorney General to oversee the CIA. The CIA was friggin' pissed. And they were working with mafia people, for example, Carlos Marcello at that time. And Bobby Kennedy started going after Marcello and other head mafia leaders to indict them and prosecute them. And so, of course, since Marcello had ties to CIA, FBI, he allegedly was trying to figure out a way to either assassinate JFK or Bobby. And the story goes is that the mafia may have been responsible for killing JFK.
Interesting. So going back to Kennedy wanting to end the Fed, he knew that once we had control of our own money supply, we could be an independent and free from the deep state. Now, here's an important quote by Mayor Amschel Rothschild. Give me control of a nation's money and I care not who makes its laws. Because he knows that the money controls the laws. The money controls the government. They can use these people as pawns as long as they give them enough money.
Oh, yeah. That's corporate America today. That's politicians today. They don't give 2 cents to anything about the American people as long as they're making their money. So if they want to put in, say they want to dump fluoride in your water, they want to dump BPA in your plastics, they're not going to regulate it because as long as they're making money, who cares if millions of people become sick or die?
Exactly.
So again, the temperature with America at that time was really, really rocky and crazy. JFK wanted to get a grip on Fidel Castro and stop his communist efforts from penetrating into Western civilization like here in America. So he had the CIA trying to figure out ways to end Castro. And so the CIA got really creative. They were pulling together all the greatest minds across America, from university leaders to doctors. They were doing crazy experiments like Operation Artichoke, which was the LSD experiments. They thought that they can get people to talk, sleep, or even kill on command by doing their Operation Artichoke stuff.
This is when they were doing all the MK Ultra as well. So
that's a separate operation as well. And from the book I was reading, the idea behind MK Ultra, which it's grown huge now, but at that specific time, they thought that by spraying hallucinogenics and drugs into Castro's air that he breathed, he can start acting like a fool and make a mockery of himself.
And that's an important point. They were using these as, for instance, in the monkey viruses, they were going to use this as a bioweapon. These drugs, they're claiming that they're going to use them to stop a socialist communist regime or leader.
I was going to get to that next, actually, because the CIA was doing experiments in local universities with the LSD and also with the hallucinogenics. They also wanted to get creative and work with doctors in contracting some sort of cancer virus. Russia at that time was already experimenting with the monkey viruses creating cancer. And so there was two things that Russia could have done with this new cancer virus. One, they can cure cancer and make America look like total fools because we had already spent $20 billion in cancer research trying to cure cancer. So America, it was a race to cure cancer. Number two, Russia could have used this as a bioweapon. If they can get a super cancer virus and either inject it in someone, they could die like within 7 to 9 days. So that's also what the CIA was working with. And so I don't know if you want to get into the book that we've been researching regarding the underground
Dr. Mary's
doctors.
Monkey. Again, this is Dr. Mary's Monkey by Edward T. Haslam. The last week's episode, or our last episode, episode 5, actually talked about the majority of this book regarding the cancer viruses, how they were doing these underground laboratories, and how not only Lee Harvey Oswald, but a few other characters were actually tied into this. So we'll go full circle here as we continue.
Right. So one of the main characters in those underground laboratories was Dr. Mary Sherman. Right. She, if you look her up, she was just this incredible doctor getting like national awards. She was working with cancer viruses. She worked directly under Dr. Ochsner, who was the head of the American Cancer Society.
Right.
And Dr. Ochsner at that time thought he was a modern day miracle worker because he also was working with the polio vaccine. He was so like adamant that he found a cure that he injected all his children, even his grandchildren, and most of them either died immediately or became permanently paralyzed.
Wow.
Right. And the doctor...
Say that again, what?
They were either killed or permanently paralyzed. And Dr. Ochsner in today's world in history books is still considered like a medical superhero for the work that he's done. Mm-hmm. But he also had direct ties to, say, FBI agent Guy Bannister.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting, too, is that Mary Sherman is actually still referenced back as well because she was a world-renowned doctor in radiation and also bone cancer. She was an expert. And that's kind of what leads us to these underground facilities that they were doing, which was basically taking these cancer viruses, mutating them, and then Dr. Mary and Judith Very, who we later learned was connected with this, as well as Lee Harvey Oswald. They were all told, compartmentalized. They were told that this was a bioweapon for development to kill Castro. What they didn't understand was that this was actually, in my opinion, an evil plan to actually inject this into the population to sterilize us, weaken our immune systems.
They actually did inject the cancer viruses that Dr. Sherman was working with. They actually did inoculate those viruses into millions of children at that time. That we talked about it last time. 98 million Americans were injected with it.
Well, I know that they did. The
cancer-causing virus.
But they claimed that was just kind of by mistake, right? Which we kind of debunked and said, no, they knew it, right? But these doctors and these people that are involved are so compartmentalized to think that they're actually doing this for the greater good, when in essence, there's a dark, evil plan behind it all.
Right. Like you mentioned Judith Baker. Judith Baker was 18 years old. She was working on cancer viruses in high school. Mm-hmm. The higher ups noticed her as a young prodigy. They said, hey, we're going to move you to Tulane University here in New Orleans. We're going to give you your own lab. We're going to give you unlimited mice, radiation equipment, everything you need so you can find a way to create a cancer super virus so we could finally kill Castro.
So backstory on that, though, Judith Very was actually creating cancer in the lab with rats faster than they were at the Cancer Institute.
Right. So at 17, 18 years old, she was giving rats cancer within 7 days.
And the way she was doing it was... she was basically radiating them, right, to weaken their immune system. And then she was basically subjecting them to nothing but cigarette smoke.
Which is a carcinogenic.
Right. which we covered also, is an inhibitor of iodine, which is interesting, right? So is there a depletion of iodine mixed in with obviously the cancer? Yeah, so anyway, Judith Very was then actually recruited by these people to go into this underground lab and to create and mutate these cancer viruses. So they take these young ones before they even have any kind of understanding. They bring them in, they use them. They're obviously intellectually brilliant, and they want to use their minds to make these insane bioweapons.
Like Dr. Deagle says all the time, bring them to the dark side.
Right.
Create little Darth Vaders out of Anakin Skywalkers. I just love when Dr. Deagle makes his Star Wars references. But what we failed to mention was that Dr. Mary Sherman was actually found dead in her apartment with her entire arm incinerated off, the most cleanest, burnt, cut off arm imaginable, multiple stab wounds, no signs of entry into her apartment, no signs of rape or foul play. Someone knew her, came in, placed her body there, and it's still an unsolved murder to today's day.
And this goes back to the linear particle accelerator, like we talked in the last episode. It appeared, since she had the whole left side of her body actually burnt off, and you can see her organs, and the rest of her clothes weren't even singed.
Right, a laser cut. So
yeah, it looked like a laser.
The author of the book, Ed, the reason why he wrote this book was he wanted to solve her murder. He wanted to investigate and find. In the meantime, he stumbled across all these other characters that she was associated with, like the Clay Shaw, the Guy Bannister, David Ferry, who we're going to talk about, Lee Oswald, and the list goes on. But yes, less than a mile from her apartment, they were doing their cancer research at a laboratory with the particle accelerator machine. So his theory was that she was actually killed at the laboratory there first, then brought to the apartment, stabbed, and then set on fire.
Right.
But going back to the JFK assassination, so Jim Garrison's doing his research, right? He's finding all these players. He found that Clay Shaw may have been responsible for conspiring to kill the president. And it took him 2 years to finally get Clay Shaw to go on trial, and they acquitted him in less than 1 hour. That's how powerful the deep state is on getting their people off the hook.
Nuts.
The FBI was bugging Garrison's office. They were stealing files from his office. I mean, they were doing whatever they could do to basically shut down Garrison's investigation. And the question goes, why? What is wrong with letting an independent investigator get to the bottom line of someone who killed the president? Well, it goes back to all these characters. And
they didn't want to be exposed. There was too much at risk.
There was so much at risk, especially with the cancer-causing viruses, the secret war on Cuba. Do you want to get into this David Ferry character?
And the interesting fact, too, is that Kennedy was looking at exposing all this, too, so he couldn't survive.
Right. Another crazy thing about the Clay Shaw character, again, he was the general manager of the International Trademark, super high-ranking official, super elite, part of, these crazy little tight circles of high, powerful people. Any single time that Jim Garrison tried to get an eyewitness account, everyone refused to speak on this guy because they were scared for their lives. Some of the other characters who ended up dying during this investigation was David Ferry. David Ferry was Mary Sherman's best friend. This guy is a total kook. Do you want to give a little background on this David Ferry guy?
Yeah, this is an interesting guy. Not just the way he looked. Apparently, he was working in some of these labs or some chemical lab as well. And somehow he contracted something or he was exposed to something, and literally all his hair fell out, including his eyelashes, including his eyebrows. So he used to paint his eyebrows on
with black grease.
With black grease. And he used to wear, I guess, an orange wig that they claimed was from the monkeys.
The monkey hair. Yeah, really insane character. And his life, he was a Jesuit. He went to Jesuit private school. His dream was
He wasn't a Jesuit. He went to Jesuit school.
Okay, well, he went to Jesuit school, and his dream was to become a priest. But they always turned him down because he had some sort of psychological disorder. Well, he was still a brilliant man. He became a pilot for this Civil Air Patrol. He was a high-ranking pilot. He was so good at flying planes that the CIA ended up using him to do these like secret runs into like the jungles to drop off supplies to these communist people.
Yeah, supposedly he actually got shot or something like that when they were like
on one of his missions.
Yeah, they were like taking off, and the Cubans were shooting up the plane, and I guess he got him out of there. So apparently he was a very experienced pilot. and could get them in and out. And he also trained CIA pilots for the Bay of Pigs invasion over Cuba.
Right, which I later read about. The Bay of Pigs was a huge failure for America. Did you know about that? Basically,
Yeah.
America was trying to invade Cuba, and they ended up failing, and tons of our soldiers died.
Right. And the interesting thing about David Ferry, how you mentioned he was involved with the Jesuit schools, he wanted to be a priest. Well, he also liked young teenage boys. In one reported incident, he had his commercial license pulled because he was doing some interesting things with children.
He took a teenage boy on a little joyride. So he was giving these teenagers alcohol, taking them on joyrides, throwing little drinking parties. He was just obsessed with young boys specifically. But he was best friends with Dr. Mary Sherman. And one of the things as a pilot, he, I guess, lived a really lonely life with his schedule. He took up biochemistry. I guess he went to school in Italy, and he got some sort of medical degree somewhere in Europe. Right. So he called himself Dr. David Ferry. And so he
probably felt that he had more experience than most of the doctors out there because he was experimenting in all these underground labs. They actually found his apartment as well.
Right. I was reading in the book that the coroner had access to his apartment because they had to go retrieve his dead body. So on the eve of his arrest, he was going to have to basically speak up on what happened after the JFK assassination, because he was also accused of conspiring to kill JFK as well. So on the eve of his arrest, he ended up magically dying of a ruptured brain tumor the night of his arrest, which is pretty crazy.
That's pretty convenient.
The coroner found all his little lab rats and his medical equipment. He also found clothes that he was cross-dressing in, women's clothing, and all his priest robes.
Interesting character indeed. And that leads us to
David Ferry. According to research reports, he was also linked to Guy Bannister. Guy Bannister was another FBI agent who had access to all these underground laboratory type people. They were running their own secret war against Cuba. They were bringing in Lee Harvey Oswald as their, what would you call it? Like, not their mind control victim, but.
Yeah, so Guy Bannister was his handler. He would use him to do his bidding. I know that Lee Harvey Oswald was positioned out in the media as
pro-communist. So he was working at the little coffee shop across the street from all the offices of the CIA and the FBI. Lee Harvey Oswald is ex-military. He was working with David Ferry in the military at that one time with the whole pilot training and all that. And he was working as a cover job at a cafe. In the meantime, he was handwriting flyers saying like hands off Cuba, pro-communism. Although he didn't believe in that stuff, though. He was just using that as an undercover agent.
Exactly. Hold that thought, Lauren. We've got to take a quick break from our sponsors, but we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
No, it's fast.
After watching two of my close family members be diagnosed with cancer, go through excruciating chemo treatments, and both die a painful, tragic death, I knew something had to be wrong with the medical industry. I wanted to know why they got sick, and I wanted to know why they had to die. I just didn't know where to start. For the first time in my life, I felt completely hopeless. I was afraid my mom or dad would be the next ones to die. I saw them suffering already with symptoms like chronic fatigue, inflammation, brain fog, pain, and sudden weight gain. I wanted to protect my family members, but I didn't have any medical training, nor knew anyone who did. That's when my best friend introduced me to a naturopathic doctor who shared with us the secrets of remineralizing the body. He taught us a new holistic health approach called functional medicine. Functional medicine is a science-based approach to target the root cause of disease in the body. I learned that all disease starts from within, and that symptoms like fatigue, feeling stress, depression, weight gain, brain fog, and mental exhaustion were all signs from your body telling you something's very wrong. When we give our bodies the right nutrients it needs, it can heal naturally. That's when I knew nutrition was the key. I started devoting my life to researching and testing a healthy diet mixed with the best supplements on the market, including vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. The challenge was 99% of the products I bought was trash. It didn't work. I later found out that most supplement companies use chemical or synthetic forms which aren't absorbed by the body, making them useless or even harmful. I flushed thousands of dollars down the toilet in the process. As I watched my family around me get sicker and sicker using conventional medicine, I was pissed off at the doctors in the medical industry and the drug companies who are selling us toxic crap. 12 years later, and I see even more toxic drugs on the market, and that's why I created Biowarrior Nutraceuticals. We teamed up with scientists to provide patented, advanced formulas that actually work. We offer superior pharmaceutical-grade, all-natural, non-GMO nutraceuticals, all tested and proven for maximum efficiency and absorption. I now provide these supplements to our family and other families around the world so that they can live their lives without suffering and live a long, healthy life. We have more time to spend with each other and more moments to enjoy with our children. Dealing with chronic stress and a demanding schedule is a breeze with our enhanced cognitive function and increased creativity levels. After creating Biowarrior, we can now heal our families and prevent ourselves from being another big pharma victim. I now spend my time teaching others how to take back their health and lives through education and nutrition. So click the button below right now to take advantage of up to 50% off our nutraceuticals store-wide throughout the holidays. Again, this is a limited time offer, only while supplies last. So go to biowarriornutrition.com and enter the promo code THANKS, that's THANKS, and you'll receive up to 50% off store-wide of Biowarrior Nutraceuticals.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are live, and we are talking about the JFK assassination, an underground laboratory, the death of a world-renowned doctor, and the connection with Lee Harvey Oswald to the assassination of JFK.
Right. So where we left off before the break, we were talking about Lee Oswald and how he was known to be working with Guy Bannister, who was an FBI agent, who in essence was Lee's handler. So he'd have Lee do his little ride around town jobs, like, I need you to go do this errand or go do that. And one of the tasks he sent Lee on was to entertain Judith Mary Baker, the new young girl who was going to work in the underground laboratories with the cancer viruses. So she arrived, I believe, a week early from her main doctor she was going to work under. So Lee had to go help her find an apartment, get her a little job at the cafe. And so what I find... I'm a sucker for love stories. Judith Baker, if you watch her testimonials, there's a ton on YouTube where she tells her story of how she met Lee and the relationship.
And the story that she paints of Lee is totally different than this psychotic killer,
right,
who was looking to assassinate JFK. If you ask her, she would say the opposite, that he was trying to protect JFK, and that he really wasn't pro-communist. It was just kind of a front,
right,
in order for them to actually identify who was
right,
pro-communist, so that he could then give that information over to FBI, CIA.
Jack Ruby was the one who died of cancer right before his arrest.
Wow.
And the story goes is, as we said, Dr. Mary Sherman was working with the underground cancer viruses. So was Judith Baker, the young prodigy. And so was David Ferrie, because he was a self-proclaimed doctor who truly wanted to create some sort of cancer super weapon. He was working with Dr. Sherman.
Well, Dr. Mary and also Judith Baker, they had both dedicated their lives to finding a cure for cancer. And if you listen to Judith Mary Baker's her testimony, she'll tell you just that. So they recruited her as a young 18-year-old straight out of high school. Again, she was actually developing cancer in rats quicker than what they were. So they knew that she was a prodigy, and they immediately took her in so that she can help them study and create these bioweapons.
Right. So I guess going full circle, because I know we're short on time like we always are, the JFK assassination, they chose Lee Oswald as the patsy, the lone gunman. But before he could even go on trial, have a fair trial, they executed him before he could tell his story.
Another death. It's like
death.
Everyone's got to be eliminated. Any source of any evidence that could get out, they've got to eliminate any opportunity for that to happen. Because, again, it was linked back to all of these agencies within the U.S.
So I don't have much notes on the Jack Ruby character, but the one little thing I got about Jack Ruby is that he was sitting in a window at the main Del Plaza where JFK was killed. He watched the shooting occur. He was going to be an eyewitness. But he ended up dying of cancer just a few weeks before they overruled his appeal in court. So he was sitting in jail for however long, and he was trying to commit suicide in jail many times. And then right before he was about to go on trial, he just died of cancer. Mary Sherman was hacked to death and burned before she could stand trial or be a witness.
Right.
David
Right.
Ferry died of a brain rupture on the eve of his arrest. Lee Oswald was assassinated before he could stand trial.
Right.
And so the big, deep question here is, who is trying to cover up and hide all this information? Is it the CIA? Is it the deep state? Shadow government.
It's the same shadow government that's controlling us today, right? I mean, they limit certain information, and then they have these black operations, which they spend all of our tax money, which they never disclose, right? To do these types of operations, create these type of bioweapons. I mean, what else have they created inside a lab? This was in 1960s we're talking about. Just think of the technology they have today. Just think about what they're doing today, Lauren. I mean, I think it was just in the news that China was disclosing that they have full-on human clones.
Right, exactly. Back when I was in criminal justice, whenever I was in school, like say 7-8 years ago, it was illegal to work on stem cell research. It was illegal to mix human DNA with animal DNA. Yet there were underground laboratories doing this stuff back then. And so our law enforcement officials would go and try to arrest these underground laboratories because it's against the law. So they would just go to Mexico or places in Europe to continue with these studies and research.
And as we exposed on the last episode, they put actually aborted fetal cells inside the vaccines. It's just a twisted culture we live in, a twisted society.
Mad science. Yeah, I was listening to Alex Jones this morning too, and about the Chinese doing the whole genetically modified humanoid. They're literally growing these babies in female stomachs right now. So women are being pregnant.
Human cloning, real life. It's happening today, folks. And we know that if we're just hearing about it, we're probably decades, if not centuries behind, because they always disclose the information way later than when they're actually studying it and really creating it.
About the human cloning thing, though, like that's been on the radar for like 10 years or so. It's just not in the public eye. So the common person who's watching CNN, Fox News, local TV, radio, they would never understand. They would never hear about this stuff.
But the fact that they're willing to admit that there's actually human clones walking around among us today.
Well, look at what's going on today. Well, you just talked about earlier the infertility rates. How many women in America literally cannot have children, and they can't adopt because the adoption industry is ridiculous. So people can't have their own children. They can't adopt children. It sounds like they created a problem and they're going to solve it because you can have a cloned baby with all of the, looks and attributes you can want.
So again, pour in the toxins, start sterilizing the people. Pretty soon they'll be so confused they can't even think correctly. They'll be so confused they won't even know what gender they are. And if they feel like they should have been born a woman, well, they'll just chop off their weenie and become a woman.
Angelina Jolie, she is just live head news right now. Her little boy, Shiloh, born a boy, he's going to start his hormone treatment to start becoming a girl. I mean, the kid is like literally, I don't know how old he is. I know he's like under 12 years old though. So they're claiming that she's a total nut because she used to carry a vial of blood of her boyfriend's, blood on her neck, and she would make out with tongue on her brother. I used to love Angelina Jolie as a typical girl of this world, but yeah, I don't know, giving your child hormone replacement so that he can become a girl before they're even 12 years old is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and it's always these twisted people in Hollywood that pick up these type of things that they do to their children. I mean, it's amazing. They probably more than likely were also
MK Ultra victims.
Well, abused as a child, and then they're only doing what they were actually. What was happening to them. So they're just... Sure,
when it comes to like child abuse and sex abuse, I thought you were going to go down the little rabbit trail of...
Well, even just the fact that they're dressing their children in dresses and things like that.
Right, and it goes down to this. Basically, the common population of the world are going to follow the influencers. Whoever is the popular idol of that time, they're going to shape and mold our culture and what we believe should be, common culture. So if all the Hollywood stars are doing something, that means all the Americans are going to want to do what they're doing.
That's a good way to understand what agendas they're pushing. Just look at Hollywood and they'll tell you right then and there. You can look in their movies. You can look at what statements they make.
I truly believe that Hollywood, all the celebrities are under the thumb of the deep state and, shadow government,
And
the Illuminati, call them what you want to call it.
And you know what else is interesting? How this all comes full circle, right? Like we talked about how Hollywood, how they're the ones who control our minds, that we want to mimic and idolize them, and they push these agendas through, and how it goes back to Lee Harvey Oswald and this whole connection, how all of these people are interconnected. Isn't it just mind-blowing?
I think it does bring full circle back to the way the media controls what people truly believe in America, because just like Jim Garrison was trying to expose the real, information behind the JFK assassination, he was nationally like the town fool, the conspiracy, the nut, the laughing stock of the nation. And Donald Trump, as a president, wanted to expose the deep state. Right now, they just proved that the whole Russian collusion thing was a total false lie. And so now he's coming back with revenge, and he wants to go on his promise of indicting all of the people like Hillary Clinton and the Podestas and all of the things that they did illegally and put them back in jail where they truly belong. But yet the media is still going to claim that Donald Trump's a total idiot, a clown, an orange man, because he's exposing the deep state. They're all controlled by the same group of people.
Right. And they got to hold on to their power. Otherwise, once they get exposed, the people will actually rise up and just eliminate them. And if that happens, we'll actually have a free society where we can think, we can actually reproduce outside of a lab. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can actually teach our children righteous things versus idolizing these satanic freaking,
It's truly scary
celebrities.
where the world is going right now, because the Agenda 21 has now been renamed UN 2030. And so a lot of the people who are part of the EU want to get out of that contract so they could still be independent nations. Like Italy, for example, they don't want to be part of a union. They want to be their own sovereign nation. And same with places like Brazil. And now with Donald Trump bringing that back to America, we want to be our own independent nation. But the UN controls all these nations globally. And they want to, this is so off topic, but they want to basically break down the border right now with the whole caravan issue. And so Donald Trump is doing his best to still keep America a true nation, just like JFK was back in 1963 when they assassinated him.
Right. So anytime a heroic figure rises up to potentially bring us out of the depths of poverty, the depths of usury, they want to silence him immediately, make him look like he's a fool. They'll say that he's racist. They'll say that obviously he doesn't have the poor's best interest, and as if these Democrats actually do have the poor's best interest, because they don't.
They've tried to destroy Donald Trump in so many ways they possibly can, from saying that he was a rapist, even though Bill Clinton was, and Hillary helped cover that up, to saying that he was a fraud, he wasn't truly a billionaire, he wasn't a good businessman, to saying that he was colluding with Russia and that he should be charged with treason for not having America's best interest. Are you kidding me? Wasn't it Hillary, the Clintons, who sold almost like all of our precious land to the Chinese?
Right.
If anyone should be charged of crime, it's definitely her.
And not to mention that if you look at Bill Clinton, he's got a long history of sexual abuse towards women. I mean, you just read some of the stories where he would literally just take them to his room. He would, in one instance, he walked into a hotel. He saw the girl behind the desk, and he told one of his guys, "Hey, I like her. Bring her up." So they said, "Excuse me, ma'am, the president would like to meet you," right? So that she was all excited. They brought her up to his room, and then the story goes that he literally just dropped his pants and just looked at her like, "Hey, it's go time."
That is crazy. But again, the deep state, the shadow government, and the news media will never tell the truth on their members.
There's a video actually of Bill Clinton where it looks like he's in some type of trance. He's in some type of hypnotic trance. They're putting makeup on him. He looks like he's drugged up and just totally out there.
Wasn't his wife Hillary Clinton known as the new Nancy Reagan, where she's conjuring her spirits, and she would go to witch ceremonies in California because she was all into that, I don't know, witchcraft
Well, her
stuff.
family, the Rodden, they've been connected with witchcraft if you look at their family genealogy. So It's interesting, you know.
The spirit cooking, the weird Podesta things, and the WikiLeaks. It's
So
so crazy
bizarre.
what these evil people get away with. Even going back to the people who basically assassinated JFK, the mobsters, the CIA, the FBI, all these underground little shadow entities, they're getting away with murder.
Right.
And
right.
it's still happening today.
Absolutely.
That's why, a lot of us nationalists and libertarians were just so excited to see someone like Donald Trump take office to hopefully, like they say, drain the swamp, get these people out, bring America back to like a powerful nation again. So,
But they do everything in their power to reverse that. I mean, you look at people like George Soros, you look at people like the Clintons, you look at people like the Bushes, you look at people all connected to the European Rothschilds, all of these banking cartels.
The 12 bloodlines.
These people, they do not want to give up their new world order, their dreams of this new world order. And we were watching a documentary last night that was actually talking about how America is the new Atlantis. And basically they envisioned America when it was created to be this new world order, this new Atlantis, where they would have the Antichrist literally reign on earth.
They wanted basically like a revival of Babylon, right? The Tower of Babel, the one nation, the one God.
Apollo would rise up and take his, rightful seat.
That documentary is absolutely amazing. I can't wait to share it with some of our friends. But part of the documentary was saying that America wasn't truly founded on Christian morals with the Freemasons and the secret societies. They're actually more of like a satanic religion who believes in that New World Order and the Greek gods and all that stuff.
Well, you look at George Washington. I mean, he was a Mason, right? Look at so many of the presidents, historical figures throughout time have been Masonic Masons, 33rd degree and above. The 30th degree and above. So the connection is there. We look at also the statues throughout Washington D.C. All of these symbols and idols going back to Babylon. It's all the same mystery religion.
I just bringing that common theme. I think it was like 3 episodes ago. We talked about the Celine Dion New World Order clothing line and how the symbolism is still there. They're doing whatever they can do to get into our subconscious mind and make us believe that this is what's normal and this is what we're heading for.
See, so they control the physical reality through these spiritual symbols, which they feel give some type of demonic power to not only themselves, but also to the people who observe it.
Well, I'm really excited to see what Donald Trump does with these future indictments against Hillary and the Podestas and everyone else involved in all the nasty things they've been doing against America. How much time do we have
it's going to be
left?
awesome. Well, I think that's it, folks. That's all the time we have left for today. But we do appreciate you guys watching. God bless you and your families.
Quick shout out, you guys can follow us on YouTube at Biowarrior TV. We are officially on iTunes at Biowarrior Radio. We have a Facebook page, simply Biowarrior. You can contact me at Biowarrior Lauren Z on Facebook.
And you can get in contact with me on Facebook at Jason Zamorano. You can go to biowarriornutrition.com to check out all of the nutraceuticals that we have that'll help you and your family